When I started therapy, I thought that I was starting to address the death of my father. I assumed that my resentment towards motherhood was somehow tied into the fact that my father had passed away when I was 12. And it was, of course, but that's not exactly what got me to that point. When I was 12, my father was murdered. He was murdered while I was standing maybe 5 feet in front of him. And the thing about my dad, who I love and adored, but he was a womanizer. He had multiple children by multiple women. And in between relationships, while in relationships, he still messed around with a lot of women. And that had caught up to him. So one summer day, back in 2000, we were returning from the funeral of my great grandfather, and a woman that he'd been messing with showed up to our family's house and she shot him. And that was kind of my first understanding of what domestic violence really truly was, right? Or what domestic violence could lead to. And so I'm telling my therapist the story of this big traumatic event that happened to me at a very early age and kind of shaped what my teenage world would look like. And in the course of explaining to her what I experienced, my therapist asked me, well, what was your mom's and stepfather's reaction? You know, what type of help and support did they provide to you during the death of your father? And I was so taken back by that question because I really had to sit and think that they didn't provide me any support, right? And maybe they just weren't equipped to deal with this type of situation. This was really the first like big death that my family had experienced on both my mom's side and my dad's side. So maybe my parents weren't equipped, but kind of what ended up coming from that was my parents divorced, my mom and my stepdad divorced, and then my mother lost her father the following year. And so while becoming a new single mom, she lost her parent, and she's also dealing with the death of one of her children's fathers. And so maybe she wasn't equipped to help me navigate this new life that I was experiencing. And so we're about 3 sessions in, and I'm telling her that, my mom didn't show up to the hospital. My dad was passing. She didn't really provide a lot of emotional support. And again, maybe she just didn't know how to provide that support. But I'm saying all of this to her, and I'm explaining to her what our relationship was like. And then it clicked. It kind of hit me. And I found myself feeling, do I hate this woman? Do I hate my mother? And growing up in a Christian household, that's just not something that you ever say, at least not something that you say out loud, even if you're thinking it. But I had to really sit back and realize I don't love her. I don't. What is there to love? What has she done? What has she shown me that's made me want to love her? I think that I may hate this woman. And so at that point, I realized that it wasn't just my father's death that shaped my childhood and my teenage and young adult years, but it was my mother and her inability to show up for me, my mother's marriage to my alcoholic stepfather, my parents' inability to stop having children, even though we were poor. Right? And they're having 5 children back to back to back, and there's no capacity to take care of these children, and a lot of responsibility is falling off on me. It was my mother's selfishness that got in the way of my education and delayed my education. It was my mother's selfishness that didn't allow me to make decisions for my life that I should have been making during my young adult years, when when I'm in my senior year of high school and trying to decide which college to go to. It was my mother's inability to show me what it means to truly be loved by people, be loved by a man, be loved as a child and as a daughter, that led me into this abusive situation. And it was my mother's encouragement that caused me to stay in this situation way longer than I should have, way longer than I would have ever imagined staying in. Now, of course, I have to take responsibility for my actions, right? Because this is my life at the end of the day. And I could have chosen to walk away sooner. I could have chosen to recognize that my mother isn't the end all be all when it comes to my life. I could have chosen to walk away from that abusive situation sooner, but I didn't. because it wasn't the godly thing to do. The godly thing to do was to stick around and be the best daughter, to stick around and be the best big sister, and to be a helping hand, and to sacrifice myself and my needs and desires in order to help out my family and really be the person, the go-to person, the reliable, the dependable one, the one who's always available, while again sacrificing my needs, sacrificing my desire and the things that I wanted to do for my life. And being in a deeply enmeshed family, all of these titles meant so much to me, right? Big sister, daughter, best employee, career woman. These are all titles that I really clung to. And so when I stepped into motherhood, these titles did not allow me to fully embrace my new journey. It would not allow me to accept that I'm now on a new path with a new person in my life. And I struggled to accept motherhood because who am I now? If I can't focus solely on my career, if I can't focus solely on being a big sister, if I can't focus solely on being the best daughter, where does that leave me? What does motherhood do for me?